Welcome back to the Dallas Bankers Club show. I'm Dean Rosencrans, founder of the Dallas Bankers Club, and we're having a happy hour this evening, and it's an open mic night. And I've got some really good friends of mine that I asked to stop in. We've got Clint Kuykendall with BBVA, and Clint is a longtime friend, and we used to work together at BBVA. And Debbie Sowards, we used to work together for a long time ago at Wells Fargo and BBVA. Compass. And so a lot of us have cycled through several banks, and we, lose touch with each other. And that's the whole genesis of the Dallas Bankers Club, is just stay together. And so I wanted to take a few minutes. I know I've seen Clint, but I haven't seen you, Deb, in a long time. Why don't you tell us what you're doing now?
I have been at CIBC, and it's a Canadian bank, but they just joined Dallas, or just started an office in Dallas about a year ago.
Okay.
So new to Texas, and I say new to Texas because CIBC has had a presence in Houston with their energy group for over 20 years. Mm-hmm. But when they purchased the private bank out of Chicago a couple of years ago.
Private bank.
The private bank, and it's not a private bank. Actually, it was a lot of bankers that came from LaSalle.
Okay.
And they were owned by ABN AMRO until they were sold to B of A.
Got it.
And though they did not really care for the culture there, so they decided to start their own bank at the private bank.
Sure.
They were extremely successful to the point that CIBC in Canada said, I like the culture of this bank. They're aggressive in the market. Mm-hmm. We need to purchase them. So they purchased the private bank, and I was hired probably a year after they purchased the bank. Yeah. And so what's good, they have put me in a mid-corporate space, which is a space I love.
And when you define mid-corporate, what is that definition like?
Well, they actually told me I could define it however I wanted, but I feel comfortable saying companies with revenues up to $4 or $5 billion.
Okay. Yeah.
And I like to work with a lot of the public companies.
Sure.
And
isn't it, I don't want to say it's easier, but it sure is a little easier to work with publicly traded companies.
And I will say that these companies I've not ever talked to because there was always a mid-corporate or a corporate group above me in all of these banks that I've worked with. Mm-hmm. So I never had an opportunity to get to know these names, even though you know them because they're in the market and they've grown and they're huge.
That's right.
So this is a lot of fun.
Well, you're in a very similar situation as I am with Associated Bank. It's a Midwest Wisconsin bank that nobody really knows much about in Texas, and but they're trying to do what a lot of banks are doing here in Dallas. And Clint, that leads me to you. You've had some at least a big name change over there at BBVA Compass. Now it's a rebranding situation. Yes. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you know about that?
Well, it's interesting because, BBVA is a global bank, but they had different names in different areas. Bancomer in Mexico, BBVA Compass here. So now it is all BBVA across the footprint. So it's a good change. It's interesting because when BBVA bought Compass, their name recognition actually went down.
Right.
No one knew BBVA. So I think
I remember when that happened. I wasn't working at BBVA at that time, but it's like, well,
what is that?
Letters in front of Compass. What's that all about?
Yeah. But that's the only identification when I was working there that I ever focused on. I never called it Compass Bank. It was always BBVA Compass.
Right.
Because you wanted to be more affiliated with the international aspects and the larger.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So now it's not quite the mouthful. We just say BBVA and go about our way.
Your primary focus for a lot of your career has been dealer finance. Yes. So I'm curious, just based off of, the economy and you dealing with these dealers in the local market, do you see kind of a bellwether of new car sales as compared to what the economy is doing, just out of curiosity? I mean, how are the car dealers doing in Texas?
It's interesting. 2008, 2009 was when it was really tough in this industry, and that's when GMAC and GM filed bankruptcy. That's when Chrysler filed bankruptcy. Since then, it's been just a great market. They've exceeded 17 million in new car sales every single year until probably this year. Last year it was 17.2 million. They're predicting 16.8 million this year. I expected a little bit of a slowdown last year. I'm surprised it really is this year that we're seeing it. And I think we're going to see a little bit more of a slowdown next year. I think it's getting tougher for dealers. They're not going to sell as many cars. It's harder to make money. But at 16 million units, they can still do okay. The problem is in 2009, it got down to 10 million. Units. So that
look at all the technology that they're building into cars. I mean, to me, that's why I would buy a new car, and I do every couple of years, because the technology changes so quickly, and I want that.
Yes,
they like people like you, Debbie.
Yeah.
Well, so with Toyota moving its headquarters to North Texas, have you seen any strain on kind of traditional bank dealer finance with a large captive like Toyota moving into this market? Are they as aggressive as they always been?
There are certain groups we do better against than others. Toyota's always been a little bit of a challenge, but they've had some changes in their insurance program, so we can go against them a little better. It's a competitive industry. It's the interest rate's cheap on a floor plan. It's kind of a commodity. There's not a whole lot different you can do. What you sell is your service and yourself and your knowledge.
Yeah. So Deb, your reputation precedes yourself in a lot of cases, but at the same time, it's like, okay, Deb, what is CIBC?
Yeah, because it depends on the bank, and branding is a little bit of an issue. CIBC is probably one of the last Canadian banks to move into the U.S. So we've had to be very, conscious of how do we want to get our brand out there. And so what we decided to do, which I think you knew about, probably a month ago, we sponsored Women in Tech Awards.
Oh yeah, I saw you in the Dallas
Business Journal.
Yeah.
So we decided that this year that was how we were going to sort of try to get the brand in front of people here in Dallas. We've also done a lot of advertising on radio stations, TV, the Wall Street Journal. So we're trying to get the name out there, and there are a lot of people that do know about CIBC, even though they haven't been in Texas, because they've worked on the corporate side.
Right.
And as I mentioned, I told you about the energy group in Houston, but there's also a capital markets group in New York.
Okay.
And that group has been there for probably 25 years. But they've worked with large corporates. So if people that I've talked to are working for maybe a smaller company now, but they've seen and worked with CIBC in the past. So, we had a great reputation then, so they're open to seeing us. Plus, you wouldn't believe how many CFOs are from Canada.
Oh, really?
And they are very open to seeing me.
Oh, wow.
And so when I go see them, they're like, I grew up in Canada.
Right.
And so...
Well, we get the same. We grew up in Wisconsin. We're Green Bay Packer fans. I was like, okay, really?
Yeah, you're a cheesehead, yeah.
Well, listen, guys, I really appreciate you coming to the Dallas Bankers Club happy hour. Your regular attendees are always welcome here. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is one of our segments for the Dallas Bankers Club, and we're going to bring a couple more folks in, but cheers.
Thank you.